All right, testing, 1, 2, 3, making sure everything is working. We've already got a ton of people asking for copies. This is going to be good. We got streamers, we got Let's Players. Yeah, I can't wait to see what GamesMatter can, how, see how you guys react to seeing Hot Tin Roof yourself. And that actually brings me to the subject of today's Let's Play, which is not appearing. Okay. Hello, everybody. This is Nelson for Video Games and the Bottle.com Beta Wave Radio, and again, hashtag GamesMatter. It's an absolute pleasure to be with you all today as we explore this very cool, fun, intense mystery Metroidvania. It's new, and honestly, I'm super excited to get the chance to show it off to you today. I've been waiting for it ever since the Kickstarter, and to get the chance to show it off, it's just incredible. The game is Hot Tin Roof, the cat that wore Fedora. Not only is the title absurdly long and hard to tweet, but also it's memorable, and yeah, the cat that wore Fedora. It's a mystery Metroidvania set in a pretty open environment. It's like an open world Metroidvania crossed with an old school adventure game. It exudes a wonderful sense of style, and it's relatively kid friendly. As far as any concerns go for either my audience or Christians or families coming into the game, you get a smattering of language. You can actually see it now. There's a murder being investigated. As you can see, it's vividly described in text, but all you see is a blockery rendering, and that's nice. And there is some LGBT relationships in the game, including that of the main character, Emma. Aside from that, though, if you like what you see today and you want to support Glass Bottom Games, who has been gracious enough to get us into the game, and actually I have a little cool surprise for you guys in a second. Yeah, if you want to support the developer, you can pick up a copy from GamesMatter and from Steam right now. It is available on Steam, just released. It was successfully kickstarted by how many backers was it?
I think it was, I don't have the exact number on me, but I think it was like 1,200. You can see it in the title sequence, that's for sure, though.
Yeah, it was over 1,200 backers, and yeah, it just beggars. It's yeah. I'm literally speechless, and it's not just because I can't speak English, even though that is a difficulty sometimes. But yeah, so we're covering the game today. It's a pleasure. If you want a copy, you can get one from GamesMatter today, and you can pick up it up on Steam and support the developer. Interesting thing is, everything you do to promote just buying a title, that is absolutely amazing, and it helps the developer's future efforts, and that's great. But even if you don't have a large following, even if you don't have hundreds or thousands of Twitter followers, every single tweet, Miiverse post, Steam review, all of that really helps. And it, whether it's good, bad, or otherwise, your honest feedback helps the developer not only improve future projects, but improve this one, because this is not the end of the journey for Hot Tin Roof. And without further ado, this is Hot Tin Roof. This is Nelson for Video Games Bible and Big Games Matter, and I also have with me today the pleasure of having Michael Nielsen from Glass Bottom Games. How you doing today, man?
Good, good.
Did I pronounce your name right?
Yes, you did it. Michael Nielsen. Most people say Nelson, or Nielsen was even one that was very odd recently. Yeah, pretty close to your name, I guess, or what people call you.
Yeah, so I knew it wasn't Nelson.
Yes.
Although, depending on where you came from, that might be a little bit different. So, we're investigating a murder right now. So, can you sort of explain what this sequence is and what Hot Tin Roof is for the uninitiated?
Absolutely. So right now you're looking at a murder, clearly. So what you want to do in Hot Tin Roof, since it's a mystery style game, is go around, collect clues, question people, but it's also a Metroidvania, like Nelson said. So you're going around, jumping, not really shooting a gun per se that hurts people. It's more of a Inspector Gadget gun, is what we like to call it. So it's still got that Mega Man jump and shoot, but you're shooting grappling hooks and all sorts of gadgets that help you get through puzzles. So there's a whole exploration, puzzle-solving bit to it, as well as the mystery-solving, clue-collecting part of the game.
And actually,
So,
I really like the system you guys have. Although sometimes it can be a little bit tedious to switch out between them, but the system you guys have for loading the revolver full of the different rounds, which is like Metroid's different ammo types, such as the missile and stuff, I thought it was really cool and inventive. The
Thank
grapple
you.
rounds are a personal favorite.
Everybody seems to love the grapple rounds. It's great. Even when you get there's this other spoilers, but there's this other minor spoilers, so then you don't have to really cover your ears. You get a different weapon type that can potentially help you get through the air better than grappling. But everybody still goes back to the grapples. They just love, climbing up on walls, being Spider-Man and stuff.
And we mean Spider-Man. We don't appreciate lawsuits as independent people.
Yes, this is true.
So I'm at a murder scene, and I've started collecting clues already by going to my handy-dandy notebook. If any of you guys remember that show, or maybe I'm just too young. So yeah, I'm hearing this stuff about a dude named Leo committing the murder, and that he had opportunity and motive. But apparently, not everything is as it seems in Tin Roof, right?
That's correct. And Leo is actually the person who was murdered.
Oh,
We don't.
that makes things a little bit different.
Yeah. You got to make sure you read through the text. It's definitely one of those old school adventure type games in terms of how the plot progression goes. So you do have to read through it, even though it's kid friendly. To that degree, there is a fair bit of reading. But that's nostalgic for a lot of people, or maybe people are just too young for that.
Ninjas. I wouldn't mind being murdered by ninjas.
Yes. Rat ninjas, though? I don't know. Those things are scary.
Well, isn't that basically the Foot
The foot?
from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles?
Oh. Is that the new revamping of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles?
No, it was always ninjas, but I guess I was confusing the ninjas with Master Splinter. Just be warned, there will be a lot of geekery in this episode. This is gaming. You should be used to it by now.
Oh yeah. Yeah, my girlfriend's sister is obsessed with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. There's apparently this really terrifying episode where a cat melts in a microwave or something. It
I
really
should be laughing at that.
Yeah, I know. It's terrible. My girlfriend can't watch it without freaking out. It's great.
It's great. This wasn't your typical average murder/robbery.
That's correct.
So, I have all these different clues. We have murder motive. We have the suspect, the possible murder weapon, which I'm thinking is another weapon type, based off of what I'm hearing. Clues, it might be an explosive thingy. So, here I have clues. What do I do with them now?
So, with the clues, you can talk to people regarding the clues to get new information. You can always ask Franky, your cat companion wearing the fedora. She'll often give you insight. But you definitely need the clues to get warrants, which is how you progress into certain areas that are blocked to you. So as a detective, trying to follow the law and everything, which you don't necessarily have to do in this game, but if you want to follow the law, you want to collect the clues so you can get a warrant. And to get a search warrant, I think it was means and suspect. There's 4 types in that warrant clue collecting system. And 2 of them you need for a search warrant, and 4 of them you need for an arrest warrant. And you go to your chief to get one of those warrants so you can get to the next area if you want to, again, go by legal means.
And you keep saying legal, so I'm guessing that there are illegal means of accomplishing your goals as well.
That's correct. There are multiple endings to the game and multiple ways to get through certain parts of the game. So you can be a good law-abiding detective, make sure everybody's doing well, taking care of the populace, or you can be a loose cannon cop. You can go around busting down doors, ain't nobody telling you what to do kind of thing. Or you can do something in the middle. There's just different ways to approach the situation. Sometimes you can even buy clues from shady characters that would otherwise be impossible. It's all about how you want to approach the situation.
I'm finding a really interesting thing already, and that's that as I'm walking around, the perspective is shifting and changing. So this isn't your average 2D platformer.
That's correct. So we initially had this working in a different game prototype, which we went through several phases of, didn't work, scrapped, tried again, didn't work, scrapped, and the tech eventually ended up being Hot Tin Roof. But the tech that I'm talking about is a 3D element to a 2D platformer. So one of the things we were trying to figure out is, we love 3D platformers, but we wanted to keep that kind of old classic Metroidvania feel. So we just added a third dimension, so you can actually go into the screen or out of the screen through several parts of the game. You can go around corners, go in houses and doors and rooms, just trying to open up the world more, make it feel bigger.
And one of the viewers asked a question, and it was, what is the we see BT in the upper right, and that's the currency of the game, right?
That's correct. So in the upper right, you've got a coin purse, and the currency of the game is bits. And you can collect bits from destroying random things in the game, boxes and such. You can also find these special. They're the equivalent to like finding a treasure chest full of rupees in some other game that I'm sure we all know.
Well,
and
we wouldn't know though. We wouldn't know.
Well,
we can't name it.
If I can name drop. So in a lot of Zelda games, you can just open up a chest, get like a golden rupee or a red rupee, and they're worth 20 or 100. So there are several of those throughout the game that you can get to pick up, and you can go buying all sorts of things, including weapon upgrades, new weapon ammo types, clues, health. You can get all sorts of things, even wallet upgrades.
Ah, man, I should have answered that. We're getting here this really interesting sense of humor. We have the slice of pie restaurant. I know puns are so contagious in game development, but really, how did you guys manage to infuse a noir sense of humor? Because a noir sense of humor is distinctly different than perhaps a Disney sense of ha-ha, funny, very innocent, whereas noir is a little bit more hard-edged. So how did you blend those two styles without alienating both audiences? Because you guys happen to find a pretty good balance.
Thank you. Yeah, it was definitely a challenge. And one of our core philosophies in terms of story writing, who you can thank Megan, the programmer and main designer, for, since she's also the writer. We all wear many hats here. But she and I both believe that in order to have a really kind of dynamic world, you need elements of both, positive and negative. For instance, if everything in the world is dark and gloomy, then if you have a dark and gloomy event occur, it's not really that substantial. It doesn't really affect you as much because the world's dark and gloomy. But if you were to have a happy world and something dark happens, it's completely shocking. And the inverse is true. If you have a dark and gloomy world and funny things happen, So we tried to strike a really strong balance. And it was really difficult because, again, this is a noir game. And noir is all about, the darker hues of the color spectrum, the, bitter parts of society. A lot of dark themes, murder, all that. But we also wanted to make it contrast so that it's funny. You can look at Grim Fandango, for instance, as an inspiration.
Exactly.
Yeah. So we just tried to break it up in that regard, and we try to do that with all the characters so that they stand out. Sometimes they're very, very dark, and the game can turn really incredibly dark if you let it, or it can be really lighthearted. Again, it's how you choose to go through it.
Yeah, based on how your reactions to other characters and etc. You can either be, I've noticed that Franky can either be, it's sort of like Sam and Max, where you can be a very diplomatic voice, or you can be an absolutely insane psychopath.
Yeah, pretty much.
And actually, an interesting thing. So here we are, and we just went underground to the rat section of town. We have some class war here to a certain degree. We've got some inequalities, and so we're going down to the rat section of town where some people basically use them as the labor, the slaves. And I'm walking around through this dark gloomy. I'm asking people for questions and clues, and I come to this hole in the wall, and there's this gleaming bathroom.
Yep.
and I use the toilet, and a little brown particles come up, and it says saving. Can you explain that?
Yeah, absolutely.
And
So,
actually, I remember Megan. She actually asked Twitter. She said, "What should I do? Should I make it the bathroom fit, or should I have it be completely different than the rest of the background?" And I said, "Make it different." And so to see it in the game, I was sort of like, "Whoa!" So yeah, how did you guys come up with that save system?
yeah, so it took a lot of trial and error, and I mean we did end up just asking people, and so the people's choice kind of decided what was in the game, which is I think pretty cool. But at first we were going to have a system where you would actually have smoking and cigarettes and stuff because of the noir theme and all. And so you would, like, for instance, go up to somebody, light their cigarette for them, and you could, like, ask them questions, and maybe there would be a thing where maybe if you, light your own cigarette or something, smoke would fill the screen and it would be like a save, thing. But that ended up becoming too difficult to implement, and it felt like we'd be pushing that we were covering the noir theme enough as it was, and we didn't necessarily need to force that into the game. And so we were thinking of all sorts of funny ways to have it, and we were looking at some other games' save systems. I think Dead Rising is one of the examples we pulled up where you actually use the bathroom to save. I think No More Heroes is another one. And we ended up coming up with this weird thing where you just have bathrooms in random places, and they'd be, clearly in like a normal building and stuff, but also like deep underground and like in all sorts of weird places. And we kind of had an inside joke going of the multiverse bathrooms, where it's like the bathrooms themselves are existing in a completely different universe. And so you just like find, like kind of Doctor Who, you just like find this random thing around the corner that just didn't belong there at all. Yeah, we decided to keep that in the game.
So yeah, and I love how when Franky explains the game elements, she says something like, I just had to log my progress, and you're like, what? And she's like, I just had to save my state, if you know what I mean. And it's this increasing, you get this sort of like little meta touch that's really nice.
Thank you. Yeah, you can thank Megan for that. She's a genius at breaking the fourth wall in very subtle ways.
Now, was there ever a point in development where you're like, okay, I'm not sure if this would work, or if it's too kiddie, or it's not kiddie enough, or if this game element, such as the cigarette smoking, how did you guys make those decisions?
Yeah, there were a lot of them actually. So one of the big ones is if you look in the dump, which is the level that you're in right now, I believe. You will notice that it's very, very brown, and we actually had a lot of problems with playtesting because a lot of the users wouldn't be able to see the platforms because the platforms are brown, the background's brown. It was just like Call of Duty, everything's brown, right? But it was a problem. That's a missed opportunity because you could have literally advertised it. What is it again? Hot Tin Roof, The Cat Who Wore Fedora, the new Call of Duty. It's true, yeah, we totally could have done that, I guess.
Call of Duty: The Next Generation. The Noir Generation. I'll be here all night.
That. Yes, the Noir Generation. Maybe, who knows, maybe a sequel. You can name that. But yeah, we were looking at the noir themes, and we had to keep it, kind of not neon green kind of color scheme, if that makes sense. Like, if you look at a lot of platformers, they can cheat because they've got the full color palette, and they can have platforms that are like bright blue and the background will be like, purple or something. And you can essentially make it so you can see where everything is super easy. And in our game, everything had to be, a very specific color palette to stay with the themes. We couldn't have, again, neon green anywhere in the game unless it was like, for instance, toxic waste or something. And we just had to make that kind of decision to instead light the place better. And we were having issues with Unity's lighting engine. We made this in Unity 3D, by the way, for anyone who's a developer and they're familiar with that. We were having issues with the lighting engine, and it was very difficult, and we decided to just do subtle things. So, for instance, you'll notice some of the platforms that you can fall through and jump through, they have metal edges. So they stand out better against the brown background. You've got like a darker hue there, just to make them more visible. And we played with that kind of idea a lot, and just put a lot of lighting where it needed to be. and it ended up being fine. But it was definitely something that we had to make a lot of decisions on what we were going to allow in the game and what we weren't going to allow, etc.
So something that looks so simple took a ton of problem solving to figure out how to do it right.
What a surprise, right?
It's almost like game design is work. Why can't you just polish up the levels on the graphics on level 3?
Yeah, I know. Fooled me. I mean, when I wanted to get in this job, I just wanted to play video games all day, and to see where this turned out, but I don't know. It was fun, you know. It's kind of like what's that phrase? It's like if you do what you love, you don't work a day in your life, kind of thing.
And they were lying.
Yeah, well, it's still work. I will admit to that. It is still very much work, and it's very hard, but it's also really rewarding. Like this is awesome, and making something and letting people play it. I mean, even if people hate it, even if people like furiously spit on my face, like this game sucks. It's great because you know people are experiencing this thing you created that you put out into the world. It's just very awesome for me anyway, and I really like what I do. If that makes sense.
Oh, Jones on Fire. They say that this game reminds them of Jones on Fire, and actually, your team made Jones on Fire, right?
Yep, that's right. It's the same art style. It's actually in the same universe for people familiar with Jones on Fire. It's the same Emma Jones. She used to be a firefighter, and then she became a private investigator.
And the cats were talking about that. They were like, "Don't you remember me?"
Yeah. There were some cats that were in the previous game from Jones's firefighter days, and there's lots of callbacks to that game. And if we make sequels in the future, we plan to keep it all in the same universe and tie everything together too. But yeah, it uses the same tech that we upgraded a ton for this game, but started there, bare bones. And same characters and everything, same art style.
Same upgrades. You buy upgrades from the same cat.
In Jones on Fire, it wasn't upgrades per se. We didn't have a revolver in that game. That was a main puzzle mechanic. In this game, it was a infinite runner where you ran through a burning forest and you had to save a bunch of kitties, and it was really cute and it was really goofy, and we decided to show a darker side of that through this game. If that makes sense.
Awesome. So is this a Thomas Was Alone throwback? The red block that has personality.
Yep. There's a lot of references to a lot of awesome indie games we want to pay tribute to. So if you keep your ears out and your eyes out, you'll definitely catch a bunch of them.
Now we can convene the War Council. Oh boy. We can crush the resistance.
I think even that might be a reference, so I don't catch that one. Megan writes all the dialogue for this game, so there's a lot that I don't even really catch.
So yeah, you can say thanks, I think, or I hope we never talk again. I'm gonna be a jerk for this time.
It's kind of creepy, you have to admit.
Criminals will quake in the boots at the enormous size of your flower. Think it's a poppy kite. It isn't catnip, Franky, but I want a boss. So yeah, actually, both of the main characters are female, and so can you go into the process of making the main characters of Jones on Fire? Because there's a lot of talk about diversity these days, and
Absolutely.
How to do it right and wrong, and so we got everything from LGBT relationships to the main characters are female, and it's awesome that we're finally getting female characters in games that are more than just walking boobs. So
yeah.
So what was the process behind making the main characters of Jones on Fire and Hot Tin Roof?
Well, it was, at least for Megan and I, it was more of a natural process. I feel like a lot of development teams try and do that intentionally. Like they try and push the diversity card for some sort of agenda or something. Even subconsciously, even if they're not doing it for an agenda, but they want to be diverse. They want to bring more characters like that into the game, into the world in video games. But they're doing it for the sake of doing it, right? Which isn't necessarily, because then you're still drawing attention to it. You're saying, hey, everybody, look, we've got female, African American, bi characters in the game, and it's a big deal. It shouldn't be a big deal. It should be, a normal thing. There are those people in the world. The world's full of all kinds of people, so we want to include as many types as we can, but in a natural way. So we just decided to make our main characters what fit the personality instead of having the personality fit like these norms, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
So yeah, so Emma, for instance, she's female, African American, she's gay, and there's a lot of characters in the game where you won't know what to label them as, and we kind of wanted to make that kind of a big theme of the game. You'll see a bunch of like random NPCs, like for instance in the Giuseppe protests in the early of the game, and it randomly generates what articles of clothing they wear. And we didn't separate, like, for instance, what people would consider female articles of clothing with male articles of clothing. So you'll see people wearing a business suit and like a pink hat and things like that. And it's intentional that you can't really tell the gender of most of the characters in the game. And I don't know if that'll upset a lot of people, but I kind of don't care if it does. We just wanted to make characters that are realistic, and we didn't want to make it a big point. We didn't want to stop the game and say, "Hey, everybody, look at this." We just wanted to say, "Yep." They have maybe Emma mention in one line that she's a miss, and then like move on. Just never address it again. It's not a big deal.
So, I'm finding these rats on a bed, and I can't interact with them. I think I should leave them alone.
You might. Maybe they're busy. I don't know.
I'm finding this sink with water, and so it's really interesting. So a lot of thought, as with most games, even the most simple thing has so much thought behind it. So, for you, what was even the original genesis of Hot Tin Roof? Because your first game was an infinite runner. Was it just a plain infinite runner where you save kitties? So, how did you go from this to this, and how did you begin to flesh out this world? What inspired that? Because you could have just done something else.
Yeah, no, we could have gone in any direction, and that's actually where it started, is going in any direction but what we had. So we started with an infinite runner, and for fun, Megan wanted to make a revolver mechanic. It all started with the main gameplay mechanic. So I don't know if you guys have heard of a game called Receiver.
Yes. It's a game where basically you have to manually reload the weapon.
So we started development on this when Receiver was just a brand new thing, essentially, and they didn't actually have a revolver. So Receiver was, in its early stages, just a game where you had to manually load guns, which was cool. And we thought, hey, how cool would it be if you had a game where you actually had a revolver, where you had to manually load it in the specific chambers. And so we wanted to kind of expand off of that, and Megan's first prototype of the game was actually just this, it was this game where you literally just filled in a revolver and you shot your boss. And it was like a very dark, gritty thing. No, it was terrible. It was a horrible game. And she wanted to kind of go off of that, and that's kind of where the noir theme went, because it started off very dark. And then we made it more like,
is that why she said that the next game she wanted to have gib explosions? She said that on Twitter.
What was that?
She said the next game that she wanted to have gib explosions in some way, because it's been a long time since she's been able to make a game with that.
Yes. So we're hoping, if Hot Tin Roof does well, that we can work on this next game project that we're really excited to make. I can't really reveal very much about it. It's not in the universe of Jones on Fire Hot Tin Roof, though we will still do free DLC for Hot Tin Roof, so you guys can expect more content for it for free. But we want to work on another project, which is, I think I'm allowed to say, it's an arena-based, like, first-person fighting game, kind of like Skyrim, or what was that game called? Dark something. But it's procedurally generated in terms of a lot of the elements of the combat and the arena, and there's a lot of other cool elements I can't really talk about. But we want to go in that direction too if Hot Tin Roof does well and we can afford to keep making games. So yeah, that's what that was probably about.
So, yeah, so you spoke of actually free DLC, and that's a pretty interesting approach, because there's a lot of talk these days about how much should you add to the game, how much should players expect. For example, the Monument Valley DLC, people went crazy because that was paid, whereas we see DLC microtransactions, there's all sorts of in-betweens. And we see some independent developers going the direction of, like you guys are planning, free DLC and content editions. So how did you guys go through the thought process of going from there to here? Did you ever think of, hey, maybe instead of loading bullets, you can pay 99 cents and we'll load the bullets for you?
Well, actually, before we move on to that, you can have there's a secret in the game, and in the latest patch there are going to be some NPCs that actually reveal it to you. We wanted it to be one of those kind of like rumor secret things that people would talk about through word of mouth, but we just decided to put some NPCs in the game that can tell you about it. If you hold the reload button, it automatically reloads the last loadout you had in your gun.
Yeah.
And that can save you some time. But speaking on DLC, it didn't take much thought at all to go into free DLC, but our thoughts on DLC are very complicated and very wide, as I'm sure you expect a lot of developers to be.
Of course.
So we wanted people to, first and foremost, more importantly than anything else, be able to get the game, be able to play the game, to enjoy the game, and for us to keep working on the game, even for people who can't afford it. And I mean, that's a big part of the reason why I'm here with you and with GamesMatter. We want to make sure that this can get in the hands of people who can't afford to get the game, or maybe who are, too young to necessarily, I mean, not like toddler age, clearly, because that's not who we're aiming for here, but who maybe have to get their parents' permission for, like...
I want to shoot my boss in the head.
Yeah, well, you know what I mean. We want people to be able to play the game, because we think that games are meant to be played, and people should enjoy them. But regarding DLC, it's really difficult, because we need to be able to fund ourselves so we can keep making games. And I think all gamers really know that, but what I think they don't realize, at least some of them, is that when developers make money, it doesn't instantly mean that they are making a lot of money. So because a game is making money, it doesn't mean that it is a success or that it is covering the investment that went into it. And I hate using the word investment because it makes me sound like a big corporate, bigwig or whatever. But
well, we know you are, obviously.
Oh, well, yeah, clearly. I must be wearing a tie and everything. No, I'm not wearing a tie. But we need to make sure that we can afford to keep making games. Otherwise, we can't necessarily, do what we love, and we can't necessarily get people the games, for free. I mean, you have these developers that have these really good intentions, and they make their game free, and all those developers are weeded out, and they have, really good morals and ethics, in my opinion, on how content should be in a game. But they're weeded out because they don't get enough money, and then that's why the majority of the market is filled with people that want to make a ton of money rather than make a lot of content for a game. Anyway, that's a huge long thing I could talk for hours about, but we wanted to make sure that we could, at least for this game, make it so that we encourage people to buy the game and play the game, because we are doing free DLC, and we can't make the free DLC. We haven't made it yet. It's not done. We haven't even started it. We can't make it if we don't get enough money from the game. We can't afford to continue development on it and work on our next game or any further future DLC, maybe a year in the future or whatever, that we'd like to, if we can't afford to do it. So that's where we kind of wanted to do. We wanted to have a good faith thing and have people play the game first and foremost.
Awesome. Light torches. You're a wedge shy of a round. You're a wine glass shy of a cheese tray.
I love the dialogue that Megan wrote. I just gotta say it. I'm actually a fan of hers.
Well, that's actually an interesting thing, because your entrance into the industry, you guys clearly, you have very good intentions. You guys have ethics and morality. One of the interesting things that you noted was actually your entrance into the Glass Bottom Games team. So if you don't mind my asking, how did you get your entrance into the video game industry? Did you say, hey Megan, I can polish up the graphics on level 3?
No, it wasn't that simple, actually. I was just an average person, like anyone else. I'm still an average person. Please,
yeah,
anyone
right.
Just don't think that I'm special. I'm just another person like you guys. You guys can totally do this too if you want. I was just a normal con goer who went to DCC. I mean, clearly I wasn't just a normal person with no skills or anything. I had some experience in making some levels, but that was just a hobby thing for... So I guess I could start there, actually. There was this MMO I played as a kid, and it was called Growl Online. It was a really fun... it's kind of like if A Link to the Past were an MMO. I loved it.
It was called Growl Online?
Yeah, that's what it was.
Did it have furries in any capacity?
It had a lot of different, creatures of different, like, you can change your body type and like your heads and all sorts of different features of your body, and I think there were some like cats and stuff in there, so maybe.
Okay. I just want to make sure, because if I'm going to play an MMO, I want to turn into a glorious cat beast with a beard.
I think that's probably possible. I don't even know if it's still going. That was years and years ago, but
Oh, wow.
anyway.
I just lost a lot of progress. I died. That was sort of embarrassing.
I'm sorry.
No
It
problem.
is rough. It's a rough game. I won't lie about that, but there's enough save points. You can backtrack. There's a lot of health. We try to make it definitely doable and feasible for hardcore audiences as well as casual audiences. But yeah.
Yeah,
Anyway.
so you were saying cat
Right.
beasts with beards.
Cat Beasts with Beards. I loved that game, and there was a level editor, and I played the crap out of that level editor. I would make all sorts of scenes from like my favorite books and my favorite games and stuff, just recreate them in my own way. I'd make shops, and like I found out how to do animations and like make a character just run through an animation, and I sold items in the shop because I figured out how to make items out of things in this fake shop in an offline level thing I made. And the items only made you run through an animation, and I had like 50 of them, and I thought it was the coolest thing ever. But fast forward from that, you know, and I started doing some mods for some small games and some music for that, actually, because I really love video game music. It's always been a passion for me. And one day I go to Denver Comic Con, and I go to this panel about, you know, video game development, just because I'm interested in it. And, you know, I really want to work in video game development. I really want to get in the industry. And I see Megan there as one of the panelists, and she's pretty cool, and she seems really friendly and nice, and some of the other people didn't seem so approachable. And I was looking everywhere to see if I could find, you know, a place to work or just to start. I was ready to be a tester or just a box mover, anything. I'd go be the intern.
Wasn't that literally your approach? You said, didn't you literally say, "I will be anything for you, even a box mover"?
Yeah. So, I went to her after the panel and I said, I really want to work for you. I really want to break into the industry. I'll do anything. Just hire me, you know. And she said, sure. You know, here's her, you know, her email. Give me a call or an email or whatever. And later that night, I emailed her. I wasn't fitting anything. She didn't need interns or anything. She wasn't going to be able to pay me even, but I still wanted to work for her. And she needed a musician, and I was experimenting with music at the time, and you know, I was really trying to get better at making music. And so I made her some songs, and she really liked them, and she hired me on. Part-time contractor. I'm still technically a contractor, even though I'm the designer of the game. And we worked on a game jam together where I did the music, and that game jam pumped out Jones on Fire, for those of you who are familiar with that. And she liked the way I worked. We started work on Hot Tin Roof. I started doing some music. I did the trailer music, and then I started, you know, recommending some changes to the game design one night because she was complaining about this mechanic not working, and I recommended some things. And soon I was the designer, and she said I had really good ideas, and I started moving on from mechanics to design to level design. I started actually building the levels, and then systems design, and I started working even in the narrative, and I might even be getting into a little bit of coding for the DLC. Who knows? So I've kind of just started to wear a bunch of hats and whatever's necessary. All of a sudden, I'm the designer and partial musician for a game that had a successful Kickstarter, was greenlit, and is now on Steam. It's really exciting. And any of you guys listening can totally do that too. You just got to get out there, you know? You gotta try.
That's an awesome story. So it all started from you were basically doing your passion for free and investing time into it even when it wasn't necessarily financially successful, eventually led to your current job, which you hopefully love.
Yeah, well, I do have to make a note in there, which is that I was lucky enough to be in a position where I had financial stability. At the time, I was actually just still living with my parents. I was very, very lucky. I had the opportunity. Not everybody's got that, and if you don't, you gotta make sure that you get paid for what you do. And it's definitely harder to get in the industry. Don't work for free if you can't. But yeah, definitely try and get in there. Get your foot in the door. That's all I gotta say.
So, one of the interesting things that people have noticed is actually Meg's work. Megan from Glassbottom Games. She's the head of the company. She actually used to be an animator on, well, not animator, but she worked on Lego Universe.
Yep.
So one of the viewers asked, is that the reason behind the block voxely sort of look?
You know, maybe. I honestly think it was just because we didn't have an artist during the game jam where we did Jones on Fire, and Megan had to do all of the art. And, you know, she's not an artist, she's a programmer. And that doesn't mean she couldn't be, but she ended up making these blocky graphics that, you know, at first were kind of just, whatever, placeholder, but then she started to grow fond of them, and I did too. And it was kind of reminiscent of, like, you know, kind of lo-fi, but in 3D. Kind of like, if you guys have played, what's that game called? That Something Texas. I'm really bad at remembering.
Oh, Bigger in Texas.
Not Bigger in Texas, it's... That Something Texas, maybe, or I don't remember, but it's
Death
a game
and
that you
Taxes?
got. What's that?
Death and Taxes?
No, not Death and Taxes. Texas, like the state. Sorry if I'm messing with my pronunciation.
Hey,
Anyway,
I'm messing with it either too. So basically, what's the so the basic idea is behind this Texas game, which shall remain unnamed, is
The Real Texas. That's it. The Real Texas.
okay.
And you had, you know, blocky 3D pixel kind of graphics, and more games started to adopt that, and we wanted to kind of do our own take on that. And we have this really awesome artist named Fulmer Kelly, and he did a lot of the promo art and kind of helped Megan decide where to take that art style and where to develop it. And it started off from blocky 3D pixel stuff to an actual developed Boxian art style, is what they like to call it.
Oh wow! So we're getting some slow-moving projectiles moving towards us. One interesting thing I noticed about the flame rounds that I haven't seen in a game before is that it doesn't shoot out a flame. It isn't like a missile. It's actually a literal torch coming out of your gun. So what inspired that specific mechanic?
Yeah, well, if you've ever seen those fake guns where you pull the trigger and like a flag comes out and it ends up being a lighter instead of an actual gun, we wanted to. That was the original concept for that, and we had a lot of issues, and we still kind of do, and maybe we might tweak this a bit in like a DLC. Maybe you'll have an upgrade for this, but you know, it's very close range. You have to get really close to things to use it, and for better or for worse, it makes it end up using that makes it end up used. My grammar is atrocious. You use it like a lighter and a torch, and so you know, when you use it, you hold it up, and it lights up the area around you, which is absolutely necessary for Old World, which is where I believe you are now.
Yes.
And it helps you see invisible things, all that, but it can also light a lot of things on fire. But it's got, you know, its throwbacks, being that it's really close range. But yeah, we wanted to go with that kind of fake toy gun lighter thing. That was the original idea for that.
Awesome. So you blended a lot of different influences. Was there ever an influence that you guys were like, we sort of spoke of this before, but was there ever anything that was seriously like, okay, we can't do that? Like for example, a concept like for an upgrade that was left on the cutting room floor? Because as much as cut out of a game that is included in, right?
Absolutely. There were actually a ton of weapon types that we cut out. A few of them might show up in future DLC if we can make them better. More of a fun game mechanic, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. Catnip rounds is one of them, and we were going to have catnip rounds where you shoot it out and you can attract cats, or you can have Franky go over and listen in on a conversation to eavesdrop. We were going to have like missiles, like actual missiles, but we deemed it too violent. We were going to have all sorts of different types of things, and we ended up just cutting everything until we had just the only ammo types that were actually at their core fun and didn't cause any issues.
So it came to stripping it down basically to the bare essentials, not just what sounds really cool.
Well, yeah, I mean, things that sound cool, you know, that's what they do. They sound cool. They have to actually be fun in practice as well.
So one thing is, so that was deemed too violent for the game where you can actually shoot Franky.
Well, you can shoot Franky, but they're thud rounds. They just essentially are like, you know, maybe a paintball gun or a BB gun.
So was it intentional to make it to where you could shoot Franky? Because I was a bit surprised when I heard "meow," and I was like, oh, I'm sorry.
So yes, actually, we wanted Franky to be an annoying cat. And I know that sounds like a very backwards thing to do in a game. Why would you make a character annoying? But she's a very characteristically cat kind of character. If you stand by switches, for instance, for a little while, she may go over to the switch and hit it, which can be a real pain when you're trying to solve a puzzle and she can go and hit a switch. It's not very likely, it's very rare, but you know how cats are, always messing with things, knocking things off shelves. We wanted Franky to be that kind of a cat, and just have moments where the character is just furious, but hopefully in a good way at Franky. Not in a way that blocks progression or makes it annoying, but more just gives her more of a character in terms of her gameplay mechanics as well as her dialogue, if that makes sense.
Alright, so necessarily when you have all these different elements, you get people talk about game development as if it's just playing games all day, and it obviously is not. But how much game playing was involved? How much did you guys have to play test to make sure that something was fun? How many concepts did you guys end up having to leave on the cutting room floor after playtesting, that they got to that far of a state?
A lot, and I can tell you we did not start playtesting early enough. So we have a really great playtester named Isla Samuel, and she joined us actually really late in development. And we were really sad we didn't get a user tester in earlier, but the things that she found in COD, you wouldn't want to play the game if they were still in the game. So
wow.
we
Can you give us an example?
Testing. What?
Can you give us an example?
Just a ton of bugs, a ton of ammo types, a ton of level design decisions that I made as a new designer that were just not fun, that were difficult, that were annoying at best. And we cut all of them. We polished the crud out of everything we could. And I just gotta tell anyone out there who's starting in game development, start testing right away. Like, even before you have a working game, as soon as you have a prototype, test, because you will find that you get so many different responses and things you never even thought of. So yes, we had to cut a ton.
That's an interesting thing I hear from a lot of game designers is minimum viable product, they call it, as soon as you have a prototype. So what was the first prototype for Hot Tin Roof? Was it Jones on Fire?
Well, I mean, you can say that Jones on Fire definitely was a prototype for Hot Tin Roof, as it's using the same tech and a lot of similar elements. You could also say the Revolver game that I told you about, where you shoot your boss, was a prototype. You could say that...
Was the Revolver game ever released in any form? Can we play that?
No. It was just a tech demo. It was a tech demo that never even saw, outside the company. We just had that to test the mechanic and see if it was a fun mechanic to make a game out of, essentially.
So will we ever see that pop up later? Will that ever be like a deleted scene, a little thing you can do in Hot Tin Roof, or no? No.
I mean, maybe in the DLC we might have a reference to it, but again, the game is non-violent, we say in air quotes, because you can shoot things, but it's like a... I mean, the whole game is based around the revolver. That's what the game's genesis was, essentially, so it'd kind of be repetitive to put that in the game at any point, but I don't know, maybe.
Interesting. So one thing is, I'm going through Old Town and we're seeing a lot of really interesting lighting effects, and you guys are doing this all through Unity. So how hard was it to accomplish what you guys did with an off-the-market engine? Was it more difficult than building your own?
That's a trick question, actually. A lot of people will say building your own is the better choice, but for people who want to get a game tested and a prototype out quickly, Unity is a good choice for that. Unity is also really good if you don't have the time to invest in making your own engine. Actually, Megan has a really good article on this. I think it's called Indie Bubble Butts, and it's about the indie bubble, and it's about making your own engine and things like that. You guys can check out. It's on Gamasutra. But yeah, we ended up going with Unity for all of its flaws. It's great, but it also has a lot of problems. It's not the best. But it is what it is. We had problems with lighting, and we had problems with Unity just suddenly deciding to do things that we didn't tell it to do. And all sorts of those issues that sometimes actually broke the game, and we had to go back and start all over and lost sometimes days, a week of work. We were lucky that it wasn't months of work, though. We backed up often, but yeah, It was difficult to get what you see before you, but it's good. The lighting was a fun challenge. I didn't work on it personally. Megan did, and the artists did. I'm gonna name drop the artists just really quick. Why not? Because 3050 is their company. It's Will and Ellery are the artists. Great guys. Check them out. And they did, all the 3D art. Fulmer Kelly did the 2D art. But yeah, they did all the lighting and stuff.
So how much? I mean, we're seeing a lot of different assets used in the game. How did you guys build the levels? Was it by hand? Did you guys have assets that you drop in and out? Was it a drag and drop level editor? I mean, how much went into the average level of Hot Tin Roof?
So one of the really great things about Unity is that it has a native, very user-friendly editor. That's one of the really good boons of it. So we made a gray box kit, which we literally had just gray boxes, gray cubes, and we built a level out of it. Well, we being mostly me. Megan helped with a lot of things too. She built a couple of the levels, but I'd build out the entire scene essentially, and we had a bunch of interactable things, like, for instance, the torches on the walls, the platforms you can jump through, the fans that blow air up, the fire hazards, all the blocks and everything that you see that isn't the ground. We had all those. You didn't make them all at first, which is something we probably should have done, is started making those before we did design, but we made those throughout the development period. And I'd build the level, we would put all the elements in it, we'd play test it a bunch, or I would before we actually got a user tester.
What's the difference between a play tester and a user tester?
Play testing is what a user tester does. User testers not play something themselves, they get users to play them. And they're highly trained mad scientists is the best way to put it, because they essentially do really cool science on all sorts of things regarding the player's behavior, what they're trying to do, what they aren't trying to do, gathering data, all that stuff. It's a really cool occupation. But the play testing was mostly stuff I did before we got Isla. I'd run through the level, see if it was fun, see if it was even playable, if it was doable, if you could beat it. After we got that, we would get our artists in, they would take over the level, they would throw in all the art, all the assets they made, all the beautiful walls and lighting and everything you saw, that was all them. Then they'd hand it back to me. If anything was broken, I'd fix it, and then you would, essentially call it done, except for more testing. And then you kind of repeat the process again and again and again within the level, so micro and macro, until you get a good product.
Okay, and actually, one thing is, the game, it's not an easy game, and also save points, how far they are apart. Did you guys ever consider having a specific easy mode that would make it to where you would have a specific checkpoint system? I mean, it was supposed to be, as I think Megan put it, vaguely kid-friendly.
Right.
So how did you make the balance between what content was appropriate and not only what content was appropriate, but what difficulties and what would be too difficult for the audience?
So the game is for adults. I'm going to say that first and foremost, but it's the kind of game that adults can play with their kids. It's the kind of game you can hand off to a kid or your kid or that age group, and they can play it and have fun, and any adult references are subtle that they might go over their head. Like, a lot of cartoons that at least I grew up with were like...
Yeah, but, I go back to a lot of the cartoons I grew up watching, and I'm like, this was not cool.
Right? Yeah, but you don't notice it when you're a kid. It's great. But, yeah, it's for adults, and it's not for a hardcore audience, and it's not for a casual audience. It's for both, or somewhere in the middle, I could say. We didn't put in a different difficulty settings because in terms of scope of the project, it would probably take too long because the difficulty is primarily through platforming, not through enemies or anything. The only enemies that you really find are those like acid ghost type things in Old World, and you can't really even kill them. You just push them away essentially, and that's not necessarily going to be an easy way to ramp up or slow down the difficulty without having to remake the entire level, which essentially triples the development period if you want to do just 3 difficulty modes, for instance.
Okay. So essentially, it's just a whole lot of work.
Yes. The whole game, you can play through it if you aren't very good at video games. There are some hard parts near the end, and there are some side areas that are very difficult. But we wanted to try and strike a balance, if that makes sense.
Okay. So we're starting to come to our the end of our time with Hot Tin Roof, and it's been an absolute pleasure. What was your favorite part of development? You obviously wore many hats, from game designer to music. So, first of all, what was your favorite music track that you made? And also, I mean, this has been a pretty long development cycle. From you guys went from Kickstarter to today, where you guys just released. I think it was yesterday, day before yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
So, what's been your favorite part of development?
So I'd say that my favorite part is probably it's a tie between actually building the levels and watching people play them. Because there's a lot of joy in creation. It's like playing Legos or like Minecraft or something. They're putting something together and you're thinking, oh, I hope they find this fun. I hope this is a good challenge. Oh, I wonder if they'll catch this. And then the other side of it is, you watch them play it, and you learn all these things. And sometimes you have these really funny stories and these really funny reactions, things you never expected, but in a good way, like hilarious situations. Seriously, if you want a lot of joy, watch playtesters play your game, because it can be really funny.
What's the funniest reaction you've seen?
So, there was this one playtester who refused to use anything but grapples, for instance. I think I alluded to this earlier, only because it stands out so much. She would get all these new ammo types. She's like, no, I want to play with grapples. And so she would try and get through the whole game. She got really far on just grapples. But there were some puzzles where you needed, the other ammo types in certain sequences and such. But it was really funny how much she loved that. And she actually developed a relationship with Franky, and she was talking back to Franky, and it was just really cool to watch.
And these are the sort of people this is what you designed the game for.
Absolutely, I love that. Oh, another favorite thing though, there was this one kid that we had a showing of our game at it was Denver Comic Con. It was one of the recent ones, and this one kid came by and he loved the game, the portion of the game that we had, which was horribly broken and unfinished, but he loved it so much. He came by all 3 days that we were there, and he played it. He played the crap out of it, and he loved it, and he kept playing it, and he kept trying to beat his time, and he beat it faster than any of the developers could beat it. Like, he would be like a speed runner, and it was just so great. He made us so happy that we actually put him in the game. There's one of the NPCs, and I'm not going to say a name because it's his name, and I don't want to, privacy, whatever.
Of course.
But he's in the game somewhere, and he's in the dump, and we loved having that kid play it, and we love it when people play our games, even if they hate them. It's a lot of fun.
I know it's a little bit vain, but I don't know how I'd feel about being in the dump.
Yeah, I know, but
I don't know who you based the rat who was on the toilet off of, but if it was me, I don't know how I think I'd be happy, but I don't know how happy I'd be.
Your few moments of fame in the game is on the toilet. A dimensional toilet, mind you. But
Oh, interesting. So I'm seeing. So yeah, the last thing I want to talk about is that in the game I see there's an active thing where you're trying to make players think. It isn't just go to the next quest marker, etc., etc. You actually have to think and then ask questions and figure out what's going to get you where you want to go. So, there's so many different elements to it. I guess was there ever a thought that maybe this isn't going to work?
There was a couple thoughts like that. Megan's older than me, and she's played a lot more adventure games than I have. And she's aiming for this to hopefully hit with some of the adventure game audience as well as a bunch of other people. And in a lot of adventure games, there are points where you don't know what to do. There's no way to figure out what to do without talking to people, which is what adventure games are essentially all about, is talking to people, interacting with the environment through point-and-click, mostly for point-and-click adventures, and sometimes collecting things from people.
Let me put it this way. In Grim Fandango, which I had a chance to play thanks to a friend recently, in Grim Fandango there's a section where there are these demon beavers. And to destroy them, you can't just use the fire extinguisher you have on them. You have to pick up a bone, from the bridge of bones that they've created, the dam of bones, and then you have to throw that bone into the tar pit and wait until the beavers dash in after the bones to try to extinguish them, so that they'll die in the tar pit. So how did you guys try to avoid the labyrinthian sort of logic sometimes you see?
Well, sometimes we embraced it, sometimes we tried to avoid it, but what we definitely did do is make sure that there are ways to get around it. So there are multiple ways to get through a lot of the game.
Such as the grapples, just constant grapples.
Yeah. Well, you could say that, but there's also things like, for instance, you can collect the clues, be a goody two-shoes, get a warrant, or you could just blast the door down and say, forget your warrant, I'm going to go in here anyway.
Oh, I can blast down the door.
Depends on the door. There are some doors you can actually blast down, but there's other ways to get around things. So, for instance, if a player has never played an adventure game before, they actually get stuck and they don't know what to do, and they don't want to ask Franky or go to the chief or talk to any NPCs, they can still, if they're persistent, they can find a way into where they're supposed to go. But there's other ways to do it, and they're a lot faster, you could argue, or slower, depending on how you like to play the game. That you can go from more traditional means, collecting clues, and talking to people to figure out where to go next. So we wanted to allow it to be for both, if that makes sense.
And one final thing, I'm finding this one section in Old Town that you if you look at the Twitch, that you'll see me playing. Sometimes I encounter something where that there's invisible acid ghosts or whatever.
That's a bug. Let me tell you, that's a bug. We're working on it. There are still a couple bugs in there because, again, learn from our mistake. We started testing late in development. Those wouldn't be in there if we started early, so it's our fault. But the game has very few bugs, but there are a few in there. So that's one of them we're working to fix. They should be hopefully fixed within the next few days, if not like a week or somewhere around that time. We're trying to give ourselves a little bit of time to relax after the rush, but we're also trying to make sure that there aren't any huge bugs. I spent this morning fixing a really big bug, actually. That was a problem, but it should be fixed now. But yeah, there are a couple, even though it's done, and that's our fault. But they aren't that big, hopefully, and hopefully they won't dissuade you from continuing the game. And hopefully we will get them done and fixed as soon as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, our hour's done, and it passed by so fast. But my time with Hot Tin Roof, despite the concerns from my audience, I've had fun with it. You guys did a really good job, and I'm excited to see that your labor has come to an end. And I hope that you guys get some good rest after this, because this has been a real labor of love. So yeah, definitely, everybody, this has been Hot Tin Roof. The cat that wore Fedora. This has been
longest
Nielsen.
title ever.
Yes, longest title ever. Dear gosh, that is a horror to tweet. It's like it's 139 characters. I find it difficult to even recommend. It's like, hi, I'd like to announce Hot Tin Roof, the cat that wore a Fedora. Oh man, and I'm looking for like letters to express my happiness. I try to make a smiley face and I don't have enough characters.
It's terrible, yeah. We thought it was funny, but
it is funny.
We just call it Hot Tin Roof for short, and people seem to know that. So, hopefully, anyway.
Well, I've enjoyed my time with it, despite the longest name ever. And if you want to pick up Hot Tin Roof, the cat that wore Fedora, head over to Twitter, ask for a copy. We're giving out a limited number of copies today, and we're going to hold back some for the EU crowd. We don't want them to miss out on it. So yeah, I want to thank you, Michael, for coming on and for supporting GamesMatter, and I hope that this gets you guys a lot of buzz, because this game deserves it.
Thank you. It was a pleasure talking with you and being a part of GamesMatter. We really, really appreciate it.
Absolutely. So, yeah, this has been Nielsen, guys. Have a good day, and take care of yourselves. Hope you guys enjoy your time with the game as much as I did. Bye.